There was a time when Thomas held his son James in his arms and whispered, "One day you will grow up, my son, and on that day I will be the proudest father in the world." But he didn't know then that the very boy he loved more than life itself would one day close the door on him. But we won't start the story there. Let's go back a few years, to the days when a father's love meant everything. Let's revisit those times. Thomas was a simple man, no fancy degrees, no big dreams for himself. He just followed wherever life led him. But he had one goal, to give his son a life better than his own. Isn't that every father's dream? Thomas lived for that goal. He worked at construction sites during the day, and at night, he went around cleaning floors in nearby homes and hotels. Dust had settled deep into his skin. His hands were cracked from lifting bricks every day, but he never once complained to anyone about the difficulty of his work. He had devoted his entire life to ensuring his family slept peacefully at night. Despite enduring physical pain and not having shoes for himself, he found joy in seeing his son go to school in brand new shoes. Isn't that the hidden joy in every father's heart? Sometimes things were so tough that there wasn't even enough food to eat. Yet on such days, he fed what little food they had to his son, put him to bed, drank water, and went to sleep himself. That's how much he loved his son. One day, James couldn't resist asking his father, "Dad, why do you work so much? Is it really necessary to work day and night?" Wiping the sweat from his forehead with a smile, Thomas replied, "This is life, son. You have to fight every day to survive. You may not understand now, but once you grow up and carry the weight of responsibility, you'll understand. Until then, don't question this." Years passed. James grew up and landed a good job with a handsome salary. Finally, the time came for his father's hard work to pay off. James was transferred to a city for work. Thomas was now alone. With his son gone to another town, loneliness began to creep in. He continued to live in the same small house, on the same old bed. He didn't have the strength to work anymore. After all, how long can a man keep working endlessly? Now Thomas lived off the money his son sent. In the beginning, everything was fine. James cared well for his father. But gradually, things began to change. Maybe James didn't realize how much his father had sacrificed for him, or maybe he had forgotten. The phone calls started to reduce. James only called briefly to ask about his father's health and quickly hung up. "I'm busy, Dad. I'll call you later," he'd say. Thomas convinced himself, "My son must be really busy with work. That's why he can't talk longer." But even that had its limits. Earlier, James used to visit home frequently, but now those visits had become rare. When Thomas called and said, "Son, can you come home once? I want to see you," James replied, "No, Dad. Work is hectic right now. I'll come sometime later." Days passed like this. James grew older, now nearly 70. Thomas lived with the thought that his son was fine, and that was enough for him. He had married young, but didn't receive much love from his wife, who had passed away when James was just 8. Now, Thomas needed someone to fill the void of loneliness, but no one was there. The only person he had, his son, was far away. How fast time changes, doesn't it? The little boy who once clung to his father's hand now didn't even have time for a conversation. How long can an elderly man stay alone? Thomas's health began to deteriorate. Having started work at a young age, years of hardship had taken a toll on his body. Now his body could no longer bear it. Before closing his eyes forever, he wanted to see his son once. He packed a small bag, took a deep breath, and set off on a journey to the city. He dreamt that his son would be overjoyed to see him and hug him tightly. But when Thomas knocked on James' door, he was met with a surprise. A young woman stood beside James. It was his wife. Thomas was shocked. His son had married without telling him. That hurt, but he set the pain aside, thinking his son would still welcome him with warmth. But then came another shock. Instead of being happy, James stepped out and closed the door behind him. His wife stood with her arms crossed and a displeased look on her face as if asking, "Why is he here?" "Dad, things are really complicated," James said. "I couldn't tell you about the marriage. I told you I'd visit home someday, right? Then why did you come here?" He rubbed his head in frustration. "Dad, I have work. My wife also works. So, we won't be able to take care of you here. If you want, I can find a place for you elsewhere, where everything you need will be available." Hearing this, Thomas collapsed emotionally. Is this really my son? The one speaking like this? Did I really raise him? How could my son change like this? He was shaken. His heart, once beating only for his son, now felt unbearably heavy. Wiping his tears, he said softly, "I understand now, son. I don't want to become a burden to anyone. As long as you're happy, that's all I need. I only came to see you, not to stay with you. But the words you spoke today, I cannot digest them. They've hurt me deeply." James's face slowly dropped in guilt. But still, as per his wife's suggestion, he watched as his father agreed to return home. "Thank you, Dad. I knew you would understand," James said with relief. "Come inside. Have something to eat before you leave," he offered. With a faint smile, Thomas replied, "No, son. My stomach is full, and so is my heart." He turned around and walked away, heavy-hearted. James didn't just close the door to his house that day, he closed the door to his father's world. Thomas walked away slowly, the city's lights blurring in his tired eyes. He sat on a park bench, unsure of what to do next. As time passed, night fell. Thomas looked up at the sky, the same sky where he once pointed out stars to his little son and said, "No matter how dark the night is, the stars always shine." But tonight, it looked different. Tonight, the stars did not shine. The sky was empty, just like his heart. A woman, not much older than Thomas's son James, noticed him shivering on the bench. She walked straight to him and sat beside him, handing him a warm cup of coffee. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked. Thomas smiled faintly and replied, "How can I be okay? An old man with nowhere to go, no warmth, no one. How can I be okay?" "Why do you say that, sir? What happened?" she asked gently. Thomas told her everything. The woman's eyes softened. "This is not right," she said firmly. "No father should be left alone. This is a shameful act for any human being." She spoke angrily, referring to James. "Sir, please don't cry. Only those who've lost their parents or never received their love understand their true worth." She looked at him and said, "Come, you can't sit like this in the cold. Let's go to my home. I will take care of you more than your own son." To Thomas, she appeared like a divine blessing. For the first time in many years, someone saw Thomas not as a burden, but as a human being. He held her hand with a heavy heart, silently praying that his son was safe wherever he was, and walked with her toward her home. If you are lucky enough to still have your parents with you, don't wait until it's too late. They need your support now, in their old age. This is your time to become a parent to them. Don't miss this opportunity for a noble deed. Repay the debt you owe your parents. Don't ever think of throwing your aged parents out of your home. Remember, you too will grow old one day, and your children might treat you the same way. Don't let your parents wonder in their final days, am I still important? Do I still deserve to live? Because one day, you will look at the empty chair they once sat on. You will dial their number. You will call out, "Mom, Dad, come here." But no one will come, and no one will answer. And in that silence, only one thing will echo: regret. Don't wait until it's too late. Give them your time. Call them, visit them, tell them you love them. The happiness on their face, no amount of money can ever buy that, my friend. Because at the end of life, they don't want your money. They don't want your gifts. All they want is your pure love. If you can, give it. Fulfill your duty as a child. Once lost, this can never be regained. That is life. To all my beloved viewers who stayed until the end of this video, Thank you from the bottom of my heart. If this video touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel to show your support. I will continue bringing such heartfelt videos to you. Have a blessed day.